She would steal from her own family, my mother said into the microphone, and 34 people at the VFW Hall in Hamilton, Ohio went quiet. By 9:14 that night, two Butler County deputies were at my apartment because my parents had already told police I broke into their house and took a lockbox with $4,600 and two gold bracelets inside. That lie got attached to my name on a real incident report, cost me an apartment I had already paid a $300 holding fee on, and nearly cost me my job at Bright Smiles Dental on Main Street. Then a woman I had never met walked into a township meeting room with a thumb drive and read one sentence off a property camera log. And my father stopped with my name halfway out of his mouth. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I always love seeing where you're all listening from. My name is Vanessa Marie Calder. I'm 24 years old. Now let me take you back to Hamilton, Ohio, on Saturday, April 20th, 2024. My sister Leah was 27 weeks pregnant, and the gender reveal started at 2 in the afternoon in the beige rental room behind VFW Post 1069 on South Front Street. The place smelled like sheet cake frosting, coffee that had been sitting too long on a warmer, and that lemony industrial floor cleaner all banquet halls use. There were blue and pink cupcakes under clear plastic domes, a balloon arch that kept leaning to one side, and a hand-painted sign with Baby Parker in silver cursive. Leah was my older sister by 3 years. We were not close, but we were functional. That was the family standard. Functional was considered love in my parents' house. My mother, Diane Calder, wore a pale green wrap dress and carried herself the way she always did, like every room was more orderly when she entered it. My father, Ronald Calder, had on pressed khakis and a blue button-down with the sleeves rolled exactly twice. He worked as a maintenance supervisor at the Butler County Bus Garage, and he had the kind of voice people trusted too fast. Calm, heavy, practiced. I had brought a diaper raffle basket worth $82 and a pack of the fragrance-free wipes Leah liked. I remember that because I had gone to Target after work on Thursday, and I stood in the baby aisle doing math in my head with my rent savings. I had $11,940 in a high-yield account at Fifth Third, and I was trying to move into a one-bedroom in Harrison Township by June 1st. I was proud of that. Quietly proud. No one in my family asked about the apartment unless they were looking for a reason it would not work. At 2:46, after the pink smoke came out of the black cannon, and everybody clapped and my Aunt Cheryl cried, and someone started passing around plastic flutes of cheap Prosecco, my mother tapped a spoon against her glass. It made that hard, thin sound over the room. 34 people were there. I know that because Leah had a printed guest list on the gift table with check marks next to each name. My mother smiled and said, "Before we finish, I would like to thank everyone who has supported this family through a difficult spring." That sentence was for me. People shifted in their chairs. My cousin Marissa looked at the floor. My Uncle Dean took a sip of beer and kept his eyes on my father. They all knew that tone. Controlled, formal. The tone she used when she wanted an audience and a victim at the same time. Then she said, "Some daughters show up with gifts. Some show up looking for what they can take. Vanessa is the kind of girl who would break into her own parents' house and steal from us." She said it straight into the microphone. No hesitation, no wobble in her voice. Just a sentence dropped into a room full of people holding pink cupcakes. The room went still for maybe 3 seconds. Then somebody near the back said, "What?" softly, like they had not meant to say it out loud. I was standing beside the folding table with the punch bowl. My hand was still on the plastic ladle. It left sticky pink liquid on my fingers. I remember looking at my mother and noticing she had changed earrings since church, little pearl drops instead of hoops. "That is what shock does. It makes your brain hold the wrong things." I said, "That did not happen." My father stepped beside her and put one hand on the back of her chair. "Do not do this here, Vanessa," which was almost funny, because they were doing it there. They had planned it there. Leah sat frozen with one hand on her stomach. Her husband, Nate Parker, stared at me, then at my parents, then back at me like he was trying to decide whether this was one of those family things he was supposed to stay out of. My cousin Tasha actually whispered, "Oh my God," my mother raised the microphone again. "The police already have the report." That was the first moment I understood I was not in a family argument. I was in something with paperwork. I put the ladle down. I picked up my purse. I did not cry. I did not scream. Instead, I walked to the gift table, took the card off the diaper raffle basket with my handwriting on it, and left. I had been in that room 11 minutes after the smoke cannon. That is how long it took them to turn a party into evidence. Outside, the April air felt colder than it should have. There was grease in the parking lot from the fish fry they had done the night before, and the whole place smelled faintly like fryer oil and wet asphalt. I sat in my 2012 silver Honda Civic and called my friend Naomi Ellis at 2:59. Naomi had known me since senior year of high school. She was the one person I called when something was bad enough that I needed my own memory checked by someone sane. She answered on the second ring and said, "You sound weird." I said, "My mother just told 34 people I broke into their house." Silence. Then Naomi said, "Did you?" "No." "Okay. Drive home. Do not text them. Do not call them. Start writing down everything, every word you remember, every person there." That was Naomi. Not soothing first, structure first. If you have ever had that moment where you know everything is about to change, you know it does not feel dramatic. It feels administrative. You start thinking about screenshots. You start thinking about dates. And if this kind of story hits somewhere painful for you, subscribe now. Because what happened next is the part that made it real. I got back to my apartment on Pleasant Avenue at 3:18. I was renting a second-floor one-bedroom above a shuttered insurance office. The hallway always smelled like dust and old radiator heat. I sat at my tiny kitchen table with my notes app open and typed everything I remembered from the party. Time, place, quote, who was standing where, what my father said, what color dress my mother had on, the words the police already have the report. At 4:07, my cousin Marissa texted me, "Are you okay?" I wrote back, "Did they really file something?" She took 6 minutes to answer. Then Aunt Diane told my mom on Wednesday they were going through with it if you did not return the lockbox. I stared at that message until the screen dimmed. I wrote back, "What lockbox?" No answer. At 5:22, my office manager, Trina Lopez from Bright Smiles Dental, called me. The office closes at 5, so I knew it was not about the schedule. She said, "Vanessa, 2 deputies came by around 4:40 asking to confirm your employment. I told them you work front desk and billing. Is there something I need to know?" The room actually tilted a little, not dizzy, not the medical kind, the life kind. I said, "My parents are lying to police." Trina exhaled slowly. "Okay, send me whatever you have in writing as soon as you get it. Dr. Patel does not like surprises." At 9:14 that night, deputies Kevin Morrow and Eli Sanderson from Butler County Sheriff's Office knocked on my apartment door. I know their names because I wrote them down the second I closed the door. Their radios crackled the whole time. One of them smelled like mint gum and rain. Deputy Morrow said my parents had reported that sometime between 7:30 and 8:15 on Thursday, April 18th, I entered their house on Birch Hollow Drive through a rear window and stole a black Sentry lockbox containing $4,600 in cash, 2 gold bracelets, and a manila envelope of vehicle paperwork. He said there was also prior family tension involving money. I said, "I was at work until 6:10 on Thursday, then at Kroger on Main Street at 6:32, then at Naomi's apartment in Fairfield by 7:10. I was never at their house." He asked if I had a key. I did when I was 17, they took it back when I moved out. He asked if I had recently argued with them. I said my mother wanted me to co-sign a home equity refinance in February. I said no. That was the part I had not yet said out loud to anyone outside Naomi. In early February, my parents sat me at their kitchen table on Birch Hollow and told me that because my credit was clean and I was still single, it would be smart for me to help the family by co-signing paperwork tied to a refinance on their house. My father said it like he was describing weather, practical, unemotional. My mother said, "If this family has ever done anything for you, this is your chance to show it." I said no. My father did not yell. He just folded the mail on the table into a neater stack and said, "Then do not ask us for help when your little apartment plan collapses." That had been 10 weeks earlier. This was the bill. The deputies asked if I would come to the station Monday to give a statement. I said yes. Then I asked for the incident number. Deputy Morrow read it to me. 24-04-18-1376. I wrote it on the back of a dental office appointment card with a blue pen. After they left, I called Naomi again. She said, save your work schedule, save your receipts, save your location history if you have it, and Vanessa, ask for the report. Not tomorrow. Monday. I slept maybe 2 hours that night. The radiator clicked every 15 minutes. Somebody downstairs dragged a trash can to the curb at 1 in the morning. My phone lit up with 3 texts from unknown numbers that all said versions of the same thing. Call your mother, fix this. I did not call her. I did not call my father. Instead, I made a folder on my laptop called April and started building a timeline. Monday, April 22nd at 8:10 in the morning, I parked behind the sheriff's substation on Hanover Street and walked inside with a manila folder, a spiral notebook, and a printed copy of my Thursday time card from Bright Smiles Dental. The waiting room smelled like burnt coffee and copier toner. A TV mounted near the ceiling played a local weather loop with the sound off. I gave my statement to Detective Lisa Hargrove at 8:36. She was in her 40s with dark hair pulled into a low bun and reading glasses on a chain. She spoke in a way that told me she had heard every version of family nonsense and did not romanticize any of it. I laid out my Thursday, clocked out at 6:10, bought bananas, Greek yogurt, and dish soap at Kroger at 6:32. I still had the digital receipt in my email, drove to Fairfield, arrived at Naomi's apartment on Wessel Drive at 7:10. We ate takeout Thai from Sweet Basil. My bank app showed the $21.84 charge at 6:47. Naomi's Ring camera at her building entrance would show me coming in. Detective Hargrove asked, "Why would your parents name you specifically if they did not think it was you?" I said, "Because I would not sign something in February." She nodded once and wrote that down. Then she turned her screen slightly and said, "Your parents told responding deputies that your father found the back utility room window open, the screen bent outward, and muddy shoe prints inside. They also said you had been asking about a black lockbox for weeks." I actually laughed, not because it was funny, but because the details were too tidy. I said, "I did not even know they owned a black lockbox until your deputy told me." She looked at me over her glasses for the first time. "Do you have anyone who can verify your timeline besides your friend?" I said my workplace, Kroger, her building camera, my phone location if needed. She said, "Good, pull everything you can." Before I left, I asked how to get the report. She told me records could release a copy of the public side once it was approved, usually within a couple of days. Her exact words were, "Family cases get messy, keep your paperwork organized." That is one of those sentences people only say to you once. At 11:53 that same morning, Trina from Bright Smiles called me into the back office between Operatory 2 and the supply closet. I could smell fluoride varnish and latex gloves. She shut the door and said Dr. Patel needed to reduce my patient-facing hours until the situation was clearer, because one parent had already called after seeing Facebook comments from the gender reveal. My mother had posted a picture of Leah cutting the cake with the caption, "Blessed despite betrayal." Under it, 3 women from church had written things like "praying for your family," and "some children break their mothers' hearts." My Aunt Cheryl had replied, "We are standing with you. I lost 13 hours that week, $403 before tax." I drove straight from work to Butler County Records and paid $8 for a copy of the incident report. The clerk, Janet Renshaw, slid it under the glass with one coral-colored fingernail tapping the date stamp. I sat in my car in the lot and read every line. Complainants, Ronald Calder and Diane Calder. Suspect, Vanessa Marie Calder, daughter. Property stolen, 1 black Sentry lockbox. Cash estimated $4,600, 2 gold chain bracelets, 1 document envelope. Method of entry, rear utility room window, screen damaged, forced access. Narrative, Diane Calder stated suspect has shown escalating resentment after financial disputes and may attempt to conceal or destroy stolen documents. That sentence made my skin go cold, not because of the lie, because of the phrase conceal or destroy stolen documents. My mother had put words into a police report that made me sound like a person who ruined paperwork, a person who tampered with evidence, a person offices do not trust. I called Naomi from the parking lot. She said, "Read me every word." I did, then she said, "Okay, we need to break their story, not your feelings. Window first, then timeline, then motive." Naomi worked as a leasing coordinator, not a lawyer, but her older brother Jordan Ellis was one. He did landlord and business contract stuff in Cincinnati, not criminal. Still, he understood records and consequences. That night at Naomi's apartment, with the smell of garlic noodles and laundry detergent in the air, Jordan looked over the report and said, "You do not need to sue anybody tomorrow. You need to preserve proof before they reshape their story." He gave me a list on a legal pad. Request your work time card. Save your grocery receipt and bank charge. Ask Naomi for the ring footage. Download your Google Maps timeline. Get names of every witness at the party. Ask records if body cam exists from the response call. Find out if any neighbor cameras face your parents' driveway. Then he looked at me and said, "Your parents are counting on you reacting like a daughter. You have to react like a file clerk." That line sat in my chest. On Tuesday morning at 9:04, I emailed Trina for my schedule and time records. At 9:17, I submitted an online request for the deputy's body cam and dispatch audio. At 10:22, Naomi sent me the ring clip from Thursday night. It showed my silver Civic pulling into her lot at 7:10 and me carrying a white Kroger bag and my purse, with my hair still in the half clip I had worn to work. At 11:31, I printed my Google timeline. It tracked me from Main Street to Route 4 to Wessel Drive with unnerving accuracy. I hated that my phone knew me that well. I loved it too. By Wednesday, the first apartment was gone. The one bedroom at Cedar Trace in Harrison Township was $795 a month, second floor with a tiny balcony and a dishwasher that still had the blue protective film on it. I had toured it on April 15th. I had paid a $300 holding fee. On Wednesday, April 24th at 2:12 in the afternoon, the leasing agent, Emily Forsyth, left me a voicemail saying management could not move forward while there is an unresolved criminal matter associated with your screening. I played that voicemail 6 times. Then I sat on my bathroom floor for 20 minutes because it was the only room in my apartment without windows. The tile was cold through my jeans. The fan hummed overhead and smelled faintly like dust and old soap. Not the crying kind of heartbreak, the paperwork kind. I called the leasing office back and asked if that decision was in writing. Emily sent an email at 2:39. Due to an active burglary-related police record, your application is denied at this time. Your holding fee will be partially refunded less the processing charge. $225 came back to my account on Friday. $75 did not. That was my first clean dollar amount of damage. If you have ever had someone use a system against you, you know the worst part is not always the accusation. It is the drop-down menu somewhere that turns your life into a flag. Mine was an apartment portal in Harrison Township. The next thing I found was the reason I knew my mother had planned this longer than one bad weekend. On Thursday evening, April 25th, my cousin Marissa called me from the major parking lot in Middletown. I could hear shopping carts rattling and a kid crying somewhere behind her. She said I should have told you this on Saturday. I waited, she said. Your mom had typed notes in her purse at the party. I saw them when she asked me to hold her lipstick. It said 7:45, rear window, lockbox, bracelets, documents, like bullet points. I wrote it all down. Then I asked, why didn't you say something there? Marissa started crying in that embarrassed, quiet way some people do when they know they have done something cowardly. Because your Aunt Cheryl was right there, and your dad kept saying there would be legal consequences if anyone interfered. I said okay, and I meant it. Not forgiveness, just receipt. People always imagine betrayal as one person doing one awful thing. It is usually a small committee. That Friday, I drove to Birch Hollow Drive at 6:20 in the evening and parked half a block away near the mailboxes. My parents lived in a split level with tan siding and a Bradford pear tree they should have cut down years ago. The development backed onto a retention pond and looked identical from every angle, the kind of place where people believe neat lawns are proof of decency. I sat there 10 minutes watching the house and trying to figure out which neighbors might have cameras. Across the street, and 2 houses down, I saw one above a garage light. White, small, pointed toward the driveway. I did not go knock on the door right then. I took a picture from my car and wrote down the address. 498 Birch Hollow. Then I drove home and looked up the property records online. Owner Darlene Pike. Saturday morning, April 27th at 10:43, I knocked on Darlene Pike's front door holding a box of lemon cookies from Jungle Jim's like I was selling apology door to door. Mrs. Pike was 62 with silver hair clipped short, and the kind of direct gaze older women have when they stopped worrying years ago whether strangers found them pleasant. Her house smelled like coffee and cedar furniture polish. There was a police scanner on the kitchen counter, not turned on, just sitting there like another appliance. I introduced myself. I said my parents lived across the street. I said they had named me in a break-in report that was false. I asked if her camera ever caught their driveway. She did not answer right away. She looked at me, then at the cookies, then back at me. Then she said, "You're Diane's younger girl." Yes, I figured. That was not comforting. She let me in and took out her phone. I keep 2 weeks of clips because boys from the high school cut across my side yard after dark. Give me the date. I gave it to her. Thursday, April 18th. She scrolled. The kitchen clock ticked loud enough to feel rude. Finally, she turned the screen and said, "This is 7:21. I leaned in. The angle was distant but clear enough. My father's dark blue Ford F-150 backed into his driveway. He got out, opened the passenger door, took out a black box about the size of a thick laptop, and carried it into his garage. At 7:24, my mother walked from the side door into the driveway holding what looked like a yellow envelope and something metallic in her hand. She looked around once, then went back inside. At 8:02, my father's truck was still there. At 8:14, a patrol cruiser pulled up. I put my hand over my mouth. "Mrs. Pike said, that enough for you?" I said. "Can you save that?" She said, "Honey, I can put it on a thumb drive." I paid her $12 for the drive because she would not take the cookie money. She wrote the times down on a line note card in blue ink. 7:21 p.m., 7:24 p.m., 8:14 p.m. deputies arrive. Then she said something I still think about. "Your mother came by here Friday morning and asked if my camera worked." I looked up so fast it hurt my neck. "What did you say?" I said. "Of course it does." Silence. Then Mrs. Pike added, "She looked annoyed." I sat in my car afterward with the thumb drive in my palm like it was hot. The air conditioner smelled faintly like old pennies. I called Naomi and said, "I have them." Naomi said, "No, you have one angle. Keep going." She was right. The next week turned into a second job. I worked the reduced hours Trina gave me. I answered patient calls, I verified insurance. Then I spent my lunch breaks in my car on hold with records offices and public information desks. On Monday, April 29th, I got the dispatch log. The 911 call came in at 8:11 p.m. Caller, Ronald Calder. Notes: daughter may have entered through rear utility window, believed to have taken family lockbox. Caller states suspect has been unstable and fixated on documents. The dispatcher had typed that exact word, unstable. I was not just fighting a lie by then. I was fighting language. At 3:30 that afternoon, Detective Hargrove called and asked me to email everything I had. Work time card, Kroger receipt, ring clip, Google timeline. I added the Darlene Pike footage and the note card with the timestamps. She called me back at 4:56. "Do not contact your parents," she said. "Do not tell them what you have. I need to re-interview them." That was the first time I heard strain in her voice. Tuesday morning, I was pulling files at work when my mother came into bright smiles like an ordinary patient. She had an 11 o'clock cleaning with Lisa, the hygienist. She signed in with her neat handwriting and sat in the waiting room under the fake ficus tree like she had every right to be there. I walked to the back and told Trina, "I need someone else on front for her." Trina looked over my shoulder, saw my mother's name on the schedule, and whispered, "Absolutely not." But my mother had already seen me. She stood up, smoothed her cardigan, and said in that careful public voice, "Vanessa, you need to stop making this worse." 4 people were in the waiting room. A little boy was spinning a prize wheel tooth keychain by the magazines. The room smelled like cinnamon air freshener and fluoride. I said, "Please sit down, Mom." She stepped closer. "If you return what belongs to this family, your father may be willing to correct the record." That sentence told me everything. Not if they found it. Not if there had been a misunderstanding. "Correct the record," I said. "I am working," she smiled. "Yes, for now." Trina came out from behind me and said, "Mrs. Calder, if you continue this conversation, we will have to ask you to leave." My mother looked at her, then at me. "I do not know who taught my daughter to be disloyal, but it was not me." She sat down, got her teeth cleaned, left without another word. At 12:14, Trina typed up an incident note for our files and emailed it to me for my records. I printed it and added it to the folder. At 6:40 that evening, Leah called for the first time since the reveal. I was sitting cross-legged on my bed eating a microwaved baked potato with too much sour cream. Rain ticked against the window unit. She said, "Mom is saying if you just admit you took the papers, Dad will tell the detective not to press anything." I said, "There is no pressing anything. They lied." Leah was quiet. Then she said, They said you made copies of something. I almost laughed again because, of course, they had added a secret document layer. Families like mine always do. They think if a lie sounds boring enough, institutions will believe it, I said. Leah, what papers? She lowered her voice. Something about the refinance. I do not know. I do not want to be in the middle, I said. You already are. Then I asked her one question. Did you know Mom was going to say that at your party? She took too long. That was answer enough. I hung up. That is how long it took me to stop calling her my safe sibling. On Thursday, May 2nd, at 9:15 in the morning, Detective Hargrove asked me to come in again. Her office smelled like printer heat and peppermint tea. She had two photos on her desk from the original responding deputies. One showed the rear utility room window. The glass was dusty but unbroken. The screen was bent, but inward at the bottom corner, not outward. The other showed a muddy boot print on linoleum just inside the door. Detective Hargrove tapped the first photo with a pen and said, "Your father told us the screen was pushed outward and the window was found open. The body cam shows the window closed when deputies arrived. He then said he closed it before they came. Your mother said she did." I said nothing. She continued, "The mud print is from a men's size 11 work boot with a Goodyear tread pattern. Your father wears a size 11 Red Wing, according to his statement yesterday when I asked him to compare shoes." I looked at her. She said, "He told me he may have stepped there earlier in the day." Silence. Then she slid a notepad toward me. "Write down exactly what happened with the refinance request in February. I did February 9th, kitchen table, home equity paperwork. My mother wanted me to co-sign. My father said my credit was useful because it was not burdened. I refused. My mother said, then do not expect this family to celebrate your independence when it comes." When I finished, Detective Hargrove folded the page once and put it in a file. Then she said, "There is another thing. Your mother asked the responding deputy whether a burglary complaint would show on a rental background screening." I felt the blood drain out of my arms. Not my face. My arms, my hands went cold first. I said, "She asked that at the scene?" "Yes." That was the moment motive became shape. If you have ever been lied about by someone who raised you, you know there is a second betrayal after the lie itself. It is the realization they understood exactly where to hit. Mine was housing, independence, the thing I had not even told everyone yet, because I wanted to have the lease signed first. Keep listening, because what came next was the first crack in the room they had built around me. That Friday, my Aunt Cheryl called me at 7:21 in the evening. She was my mother's younger sister, 51, church secretary, always lacquered into politeness. For 6 days, she had liked every Facebook comment supporting my parents. "I almost did not answer," she said. "I think your mother has taken this too far." I kept my voice flat. "What changed?" A long pause, then, "Ron asked me to say I saw you near the side gate on Thursday." I did not. I was at choir. I wrote the date and time at the top of a fresh notebook page. She continued, very careful now. "He said it would help establish a pattern." I said, "A pattern of what?" She did not answer that. Instead, she said, "I'm not calling to be involved. I am calling so that no one can say I agreed." That was her version of conscience. Small, late, useful. I asked if she would text me what she had just said. She resisted for 10 full seconds. I counted them. Then she said, "I can send something brief." At 7:34, I got the text. "Ron asked me to say I saw your car by the side gate Thursday evening. I did not see that. I was not there." Cheryl Maddox, I screenshotted it, emailed it to myself, saved it in 3 places. Saturday afternoon, my parents escalated again. At 2:08, I got a call from Pastor Glenn Weller at New Hope Community Church, where my family had gone since I was 11. The fellowship hall there always smelled like percolator coffee and powdered creamer, and the sanctuary had those red cushions that left a pattern on your legs through thin dresses. Pastor Glenn said my parents had shared concerns about my recent behavior and asked if I needed support. "That is church language for they are preparing the room," I said. "Pastor Glenn, did they tell you they filed a false burglary report against me?" A pause, then he said, "They said there was an active investigation and that emotions were high." I said, "There is an active investigation because they lied." He chose his words carefully. "Would you be willing to meet with all of us so there can be understanding?" I said, "Only if Detective Hargrove is there." He did not laugh. He just said, "I see." I hung up and blocked both my parents on Facebook, Instagram, and my phone. Then I unblocked them long enough to screenshot the last month of texts first. You learn quickly what restraint looks like when you need receipts. On Monday, May 6th, Detective Hargrove called again. The prosecutor's office wants one more piece on the video chain, she said. Can your neighbor attest the footage came from her camera and has not been altered? I said yes. Mrs. Pike met me at the sheriff's office the next morning with the original device, the thumb drive, and a handwritten statement. She wore a navy cardigan and sneakers with little silver stars on the sides. She looked like somebody's aunt who knew how to run a weed eater. In the lobby, before she went in, she said, I do not enjoy your mother. I said, that makes two of us. Mrs. Pike snorted once. No, honey, I mean for 20 years. Then she went inside and calmly explained that her camera recorded continuously, that she saved clips weekly, and that Diane Calder had asked on April 19th whether the camera had been working the previous evening. Detective Hargrove asked if Mrs. Pike knew the significance of the footage. Mrs. Pike said only that the wrong person was named. There it was, the outsider sentence, clean, unemotional, heavy as a brick. By Thursday, May 9th, the burglary report was changed from active to unfounded. I know the exact time because Detective Hargrove emailed me the updated report at 2:18 p.m. subject line, case update. My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped my phone between operatory 3 and the sterilization sink. The revised narrative stated that follow-up investigation and third-party video evidence did not support the complainant's account of forced entry or theft by the named suspect. It also noted inconsistencies in statements regarding point of entry, movement of property, and timing. My name was still on the first report. You cannot unprint paper. But the update sat behind it like a correction with teeth. Then Detective Hargrove called and said, there is going to be a charge recommendation for making a false report. You did the right thing by documenting. I sat down on an overturned supply crate because my knees had gone weak. I said, which one of them? She said, both signed supplemental statements, both. That night, Naomi came over with takeout from Skyline and a folder organizer from Staples with color tabs. We sat at my kitchen table under the buzzing light fixture, and I sorted everything by date while the whole apartment smelled like chili and paper. Apartment denial email, time card, Kroger receipt, ring clip stills Google timeline, dispatch notes, incident note from Bright Smiles, Cheryl's text, Mrs. Pike's statement, revised report. Naomi looked at the stack and said, you know they are still going to say you embarrass them. I said, I know. She said, good. I just wanted to hear you say it. That is the thing about winning quietly. It does not make unreasonable people reasonable. The story could have ended there if all I wanted was the police update, but lies spread farther than corrections do. My apartment was still gone, my hours were still cut. My family had still watched my mother say that sentence into a microphone and decided the burden was mine. So I kept going. 3 weeks later, on Tuesday, May 28th, at 6:30 in the evening, New Hope Community Church held one of those monthly finance committee and ministry leader meetings in the education wing. My mother had been church treasurer for 9 years. My father handled building maintenance projects and loved being the man with keys. I was not a member anymore in any real sense, but Pastor Glenn had left me a voicemail on May 23rd saying, there may be value in correcting misunderstandings in the proper setting. That phrase annoyed me enough that I showed up. The education wing smelled like old carpet, copier paper, and the powdered donut holes people always brought from Kroger. There were 19 people in the room when I arrived, folding tables in a square whiteboard with budget notes, a bowl of mints nobody touched. My mother sat on the left side with her ledger binder. My father was near the coffee urn. Leah was not there. Aunt Cheryl was. So was Marissa. Pastor Glenn stood at the front with his glasses low on his nose and a yellow legal pad in his hand. I sat near the back and placed my folder on the table in front of me. I did not hand anything out. I did not speak first. Pastor Glenn cleared his throat and said, we are here because statements have circulated regarding Vanessa and an alleged burglary matter, and because that matter has had consequences in this church family. My mother folded her hands. This has already caused enough damage. Damage. Always the passive version when it belonged to her. Pastor Glenn nodded toward the door. Detective Hargrove was unable to attend, but she sent the updated public case record. Also, Mrs. Darlene Pike is here because she requested to clarify the footage issue herself. My father's head turned so fast it was almost childlike. Requested? The door opened. Mrs. Pike walked in wearing the same navy cardigan, carrying a canvas tote and a small silver laptop. Behind her came Janet Renshaw from County Records with a stamped copy of the updated report. I had not expected Janet. Apparently, Pastor Glenn had asked for help getting the current document, and Janet had offered to deliver it after work because her daughter was in youth choir there. Outsider number two, completely neutral, completely devastating. The room went quiet in that live wire way rooms do when people realize the next 5 minutes are not social anymore. Janet set the stapled report on the table and said, "This is the corrected public record for case 24-04-18-1376. Status is unfounded. No flourish, no sympathy. Just a clerk reading a line." Pastor Glenn looked down at the first page, his lips tightened. Then Mrs. Pike opened her laptop. "And for the sake of the camera question, this is my driveway footage from Thursday, April 18th. Time stamped 7:21 p.m. She turned the screen enough for the table to see. There was my father's truck. There was my father lifting the black lockbox out of the passenger side and carrying it into his own garage. At 7:24, there was my mother with the yellow envelope and the bracelets in her hand. No one spoke. You could hear the coffee maker ticking as it cooled. Someone in the hallway laughed at something unrelated, which made the silence in our room feel even stranger. Mrs. Pike clicked to the next still. "And this is 8:14 p.m. when deputies arrive. So the lockbox was in Ronald Calder's possession 50 minutes before the 911 call." Then she added the sentence that ended it. "The wrong person was named." Pastor Glenn put both hands flat on the table. Aunt Cheryl stared so hard at the report that she looked cross-eyed. Marissa covered her mouth. One of the finance deacons, a man named Terry Bowling, who had known me since Sunday school, said, "My God," under his breath. My father opened his mouth and said, "Vanessa, I can X." Then he stopped. Not because he got emotional, because there was nowhere for the sentence to go. My mother reached for her ledger binder, missed the edge of it, and pressed her palm flat on the table instead. She said, "There has been stress in this family." Mrs. Pike, God bless her, said, "Stress did not carry that box into your garage." That line lives in my head rent-free. Pastor Glenn picked up the updated report and read one paragraph aloud. "Follow-up investigation and third-party video evidence do not support the complainant's account of forced entry or theft by the named suspect." Then he looked at my parents and for once did not sound pastoral. He sounded tired. "Diane, Ron, you use this church as an extension of a false accusation?" My mother said that is not a fair characterization. Janet Renshaw, still standing there with her county badge clipped to her cardigan, said without looking up from the paper, "Ma'am, the case status is unfounded, and the supplemental statements are inconsistent." The room went still again. There is something very specific about being vindicated by a woman who does not care about your family mythology. It is one of the cleanest feelings I have ever known. If you have ever waited for the truth to land in a room where people had already made up their minds, you know this part matters. Not revenge as drama. Revenge as correction. Revenge as a document read out loud by someone with no reason to lie for you. And before I finish this last part, if this story is sitting with you, please like and subscribe. These stories matter because quiet women matter. I finally spoke. My voice was steady. I lost an apartment because of that report. I lost hours at work. People from this church called me unstable. No one interrupted me, I continued. I am not here for an apology. I'm here so no one says. Later they were confused. Then I slid copies of the apartment denial email and the incident note from Bright Smiles across the table. Pastor Glenn read both. Terry Bowling read over his shoulder. Aunt Cheryl shut her eyes. My mother did not look at me. She looked at the whiteboard with the budget numbers on it like, maybe if she stared hard enough this would go back to being a church meeting. Pastor Glenn said, "Effective immediately, Diane. You are stepping down from Treasury duties pending review. Ron, your facilities access card needs to be left with me tonight." There it was, a concrete price in a room they cared about. My father blinked once. "You cannot do that over a family misunderstanding." Pastor Glenn tapped the updated report. "This is not a misunderstanding." My father reached into his pocket and put the church key card on the table. The plastic made a light sound against the laminate. Small sound. Big consequence. My mother said only one more sentence. "You have made a spectacle of this," I said. "No, you did that on April 20th with a microphone." Then I picked up my folder and left. Outside, the air smelled like cut grass and warm pavement. A youth basketball game was ending in the gym, and I could hear sneakers squeaking through the cinder block wall. I stood by my car and breathed for a full minute before Naomi, who had waited outside because she said church people made her itchy, came around from the passenger side and handed me a bottle of water. She said, "Well?" I said, "Well?" Then we both laughed, not because it was funny, but because my body did not know what else to do with the release of pressure. 2 days later, Thursday, May 30th, Butler County filed misdemeanor charges against both Diane Calder and Ronald Calder for making a false alarm or report. Plain language, they lied to police. There was paperwork, there were signatures, now there were charges. My father's job at the county bus garage did not survive the summer. On June 18th, after an internal review, he was placed on unpaid administrative leave because the charge involved dishonesty in an active county matter. On July 9th, he was terminated. I know the date because someone from church texted my aunt. My aunt texted Marissa, and Marissa texted me a screenshot with no comment. My mother lost her treasurer role at New Hope permanently on June 4th. The Finance Committee voted 6-1 to remove her from handling church funds and records. They also asked her to step away from the benevolence closet inventory, which she loved because it gave her access to keys and lists and the feeling of being indispensable. She was not allowed to count offering deposits after that. For a woman like my mother, access was oxygen. They took it. At Bright Smiles, Dr. Patel restored my full hours on June 10th, after I gave him the updated report and the work note from the church meeting showing the accusation had been false. He was awkward about it in the way men often are when they have let caution cost a woman something. He said, "We had to protect the office." I said, "I understand." Then I updated my direct deposit and moved on. Cedar Trace did not give me that first apartment back. Of course not. Somebody else was already living there by then, probably hanging towels in the bathroom I had pictured for myself. But on July 1st, I signed a lease at Red Maple Flats in Fairfield for $825 a month. Smaller kitchen, worse parking, better distance from Birch Hollow Drive. I paid the deposit with a cashier's check and sat in my car afterward with the lease on my lap, smelling fresh paint and hot steering wheel vinyl, and let myself feel happy without asking anyone's permission. Leah texted me on July 7th, just one line. I did not know they would actually do all that. I stared at it for a while. Then I wrote back, "You knew enough." She sent 3 more bubbles and deleted all of them. We have not had a real conversation since. Aunt Cheryl mailed me a card in August with a $10 Starbucks gift card and the sentence, "I hope time heals what misunderstanding damaged." I threw the card away and gave Naomi the gift card because she likes those iced brown sugar oat milk things that smell like cinnamon cereal. Misunderstanding. People will rename a crime if it lets them sleep. Marissa and I still talk sometimes. She did not save me, but she did stop lying by omission when it mattered. In families like mine, that counts for something. As for my parents, their criminal case ended in September with a plea agreement. Again, plain language. They admitted enough to avoid a trial. They paid a total of $1,187 in fines and court costs, and both were ordered not to make further false statements to law enforcement about me. The county website listed the case status for anyone who wanted to look. A public thing. A searchable thing. The kind of thing my mother had once counted on happening to me instead. My father called twice after the plea. 2 voicemails. The first said, "Vanessa, this has gone too far." The second said, "Your mother is not well. Not sick, not hospitalized, just not well in the abstract way women become in families when men need an excuse for them." I saved both voicemails to my cloud drive and never answered. My mother never called. She mailed a single-page letter in October on cream stationery. The handwriting was neat as ever, she wrote. "I regret that private family matters became public and affected multiple areas of life. There was no mention of lying, no mention of the microphone, no mention of the apartment, the job, the church, the report, or my name being attached to words like unstable and burglary." I folded the letter back into its envelope and put it in the April folder. I keep that folder in the bottom drawer of my desk in my apartment in Fairfield. Red tabs, dates in order. Thumb drive in a labeled plastic sleeve. I have not looked at it in months, which is progress, but I have not thrown it away either, which is honesty. People love stories where the ending fixes the childhood. This is not that. I won. They paid. There is a corrected report with my name cleared, a church room full of witnesses who saw the footage, and a county case number attached to what they did. My father lost his job. My mother lost the roles she valued most. They paid money. They lost access. They lost credibility with the exact institutions they tried to use against me. But there are still moments when I hear a spoon tap a glass in a crowded room and my chest tightens before my brain catches up. There are still forms that ask whether I have ever been named in a police report, and I hate how long I hover over the question, even though I know the answer. There are still Sundays when I drive past New Hope and feel that old familiar pull to explain myself to people who already watched the explanation. I do not miss my parents. I miss the version of being a daughter that I had not yet realized was conditional. That is the part no one can reimburse. Still, I sleep, I pay my rent, I go to work, I buy groceries without doing math in my head first. Now, sometimes on Friday nights, Naomi comes over and we eat takeout on my couch while her brother Jordan asks from my kitchen whether I have finally bought a shredder, and I tell him no because some things deserve to stay whole. If there is a door open now, it is not open toward reconciliation. It is open toward distance with better lighting. They can stand on their side of it and call what they did stress, confusion, family pain, a misunderstanding, anything they want. There is a report with their names on it, there is footage, there are witnesses, there is a room where the truth was read out loud, and my name came